And welcome to this Return to the Classroom session. I'm Jenny Barnett, editor and publisher of the Cornell Alumni magazine, and this is Stephani Robson, who's a senior lecturer in the hotel school. So when we're at the magazine, when we're trying to think about the content that we want to have in each issue, we always try and include something that's based on some faculty research that we think will be interesting to the readership. And we heard about Stephani and all of the interesting things that she's doing in hotel trends and restaurant trends, and we felt, hey, I'm sure just about all of our readers, if not all of our readers, have been in a hotel and eaten at a restaurant at some point. So we felt sure that this would be a good story. So we asked Stephani if she'd be interviewed for the magazine, and in our November-December 2017 issue, we ran a story with all of these fascinating insights. So thank you for that, Stephani. For those of you, some of you may have read, some of you, if you get the magazine, you may have read this article. If you haven't, there are these little reprints that we've left at the back. If you'd like to pick one up on the way out, please feel free. So Stephani, in addition to being on the faculty at the hotel school, is an original hotellie also.
Any other hotellies?
Any other hotellies? Yes. And the class of '88. Excellent. But she's also, I guess, what you could call a triple red. In addition to her bachelor's from the hotel school, she has an MS from human ecology. So I guess you went over slightly to the other side.
Any DEA?
A little
Any
detour.
DEA? Very good. Okay.
And then also a PhD back at the hotel school. So clearly she's quite fond of Cornell, I guess we could say.
Anybody fond of Cornell? Yeah. Perfect.
So, but your path to Cornell was not particularly typical. It wasn't like, you came to CALC age 2 and your parents were saying, I want you to be a Cornellian or anything like that, right? You weren't even sure you wanted to go to university at first, I remember you saying. Yeah. So maybe you can share some of your stories, Stephani.
Sure, I am sort of atypical. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm foreign, Canadian. And when I finished high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my parents very wisely said, well, I'm not going to spend any money on a university if you don't know what you want to do. And so I was traveling and doing the typical sort of multiple gap year experience, which meant backpacking and running out of money. And I ended up getting a job working in a kitchen in a summer camp in Wales, actually, and loved it. I never knew peeling potatoes could be great. And so when I got back to Canada, I thought, I think hospitality might be the right fit for me. So through a couple of separate little trails, I ended up at Cornell and graduated in '88, which was great. But I never intended to be an academic either. I graduated and went and worked in industry, like many good hotellies do. And after a few years, Cornell contacted me and said, we have a position for 9 months. Could you fill in teaching commercial kitchen design, which is what I was doing at the time? And I said, sure, 9 months, that sounds fine. And that was in 1993, and I'm still here. So clearly, Cornell has been a very, very special place to me.
Yes. So Stephani's research sort of largely focuses on two topics, hotels and restaurants, is that right? Mm-hmm. And she's uses some kind of quite interesting techniques to try and figure out what's happening in these two industries, the trends, what's changing, and of course, in many ways, there must have been a lot of changes since '93 when you started in this topic. And one topic that we thought would be interesting for our Return to the Classroom session would be to look at how the research that Stephani's been doing on how people look at websites for hotels, very much like this one, I'm sure, and how they make the decisions about what they're going to do, where they're going to stay, what they like and what they don't like. And one of the methods that you've been using is eye tracking, I believe, looking at these sites. And of course, it's a very different experience now for all of us choosing where we go to stay than 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we thought we would start with some of that research that that I guess you're teaching your students right now.
I am.
The same things, right?
You know, it's funny because I teach a course in how to create hotels, and I teach other classes in how to create restaurants. And I always ask students to sort of start off with, what do you think design is? And the students invariably say, oh, design is, you know, people who wear black and come up with things looking really good. Design is about looks. And we try to turn their direction towards, no, design is about having people have an emotional reaction. That's what we try to do with design. And in the hospitality industry, we've got a couple of things we need to do with design. One is we have to attract your attention, because I would imagine most of you, maybe not necessarily for this event because the hotel was selected, but when you choose a hotel, you're going online and you're trying to make a choice from a whole bunch of different options. And we need to capture your attention, and design is one of the things that does that. So design is 3D marketing. That's what I tell the students. But it's also how we create that relationship with our guests, because the guest is spending most of their time, we always talk about how the relationship you have between the employees and the guest, and when they arrive, and that warm greeting, and that's wonderful, and I won't discount how important that is. But most of the time you're in a hotel, you're probably not with an employee. You're probably by yourself, or you're with a spouse or friends or whatever it may be. And so that relationship has to come from the environment that you're in. And so design to me has always been about how the space talks to you. And so I was really interested with this research project that I've been doing with a colleague of mine, Breffney Noon, who is a Cornell PhD, class of 2004. She's now at Penn State University. We did this research together to look at how people think about hotels when they're looking at the information online. And the research we did was kind of unusual, because most of the time when there's online research, you give someone a static website and you either track their eyes, or you swap out a picture and say, what do you think now? What do you think now? We didn't do that. What we wanted to do was let people search for a hotel any way they wanted online, and we tracked their eye movements while they did it. And then we went back and then asked them why they looked at what they did. And let me show you, I have a couple of slides. It wouldn't be a return to the classroom without slides, so we have slides. And the first one is just showing you what the eye tracking is doing. So people think of eye tracking as being this really sort of invasive thing. The one that we use just allow the computer to capture where your eye movement is. So you're gonna see this red dot moving around the screen. That's somebody's eye every 25 milliseconds looking at search results. So you can see that little red dot bouncing around. We had to code each time there was a red dot, what the red dot was resting on. And that was pretty much how we spent Christmas 2012, was just coding these. Breffney and I are extremely good friends, and you have to be if you're gonna be sitting around a table coding like this. So this is what an eye tracking session looked like. We let people search for a hotel any way they wanted. And then once they had finished their search, then we sat them down and we played back their eye movements to them. And we could do this immediately after the session, and then we interviewed them. We asked them, when you looked at this, what were you thinking? Or you told us you thought price was really important, and yet you were looking at pictures of the hotel. And you can hear the little voiceover there in the background of this woman describing what she was thinking as she looked at things. So eye tracking for us was a really great way of getting into people's thought process. And usually we do research with surveys or interviews. This was a great way at getting it designed, because you could see what people actually did and not what they say they were gonna do. So this is pretty powerful. So what we found, and I'm gonna show you a couple of boring charts and then I'll show you something kind of cool. What we found when people were first looking through search results, and you might find this too, that your eye sort of bounces around, you're looking at names of hotels for brands you recognize, and you look at the price. But if you look at this, I don't know how well you can see this, things on the left are information that's provided by the hotel companies to whichever website you're checking. It could be Expedia or Orbitz or Kayak or whatever it is. So the information on the left comes from the firm. And so the name of the hotel, the price, and you'll see images are right up there in terms of what people look at during this early search, going through the results part of their browsing session. And the information on the right is information that comes from users. And everybody talks about ratings and reviews and how important those are. We really wanted to see if people looked at rating and reviews as much as they say they do. So during browsing, when you first get search results, you don't typically look at those a lot because that information usually isn't there, right? When you're first going through a list of Expedia results or whatever, you don't have a lot of rating and review information. But you will see that there's not a lot of eye fixations on that information. Where it gets kind of interesting is how we had to somehow visualize what people were looking at in a way we could communicate to other people. So, I'll come back to this one in a sec. This is how people look at things. Believe it or not, you're looking at Excel. Does anybody use Excel? Did you know that you can do this? We actually totally messed around with conditional formatting in Excel to get this to work. What you're seeing here, each of those horizontal bands represents one person's eye movements during that phase when they're browsing through the search results. And each colored bar within one of those horizontal bands represents what their eyes are looking at. So you tell me, which colors stand out to you on this? Yellow, red, a little bit of blue, but a lot of yellow and red. Red represents price. So every time you see a red bar, that means someone was looking at a price with their in a 25 millisecond eye fixation. And every time you see yellow, they're looking at a picture. And there are a few other colors in there. The blue is ratings, 4 out of 5 or whatever it might be. So each person, and some of these people didn't look very much at anything during browsing. They made a choice very quickly to jump in to go to look at that hotel in more detail. So this is before you click through to the hotel. And you see some people who go price, 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 price. So what do we got? We've got somebody here who looks a lot at price, right? Price, 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 price. Ooh, what does it look like? Price, 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 price. Ooh, what does it look like? Other people really found the pictures very compelling. Okay. And you can tell gender, I think, looking at this. Maybe I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but some of these shorter bars, what do you think, men or women? Men. What is it, guys? Look closer at things. You never know what you're going to find. So this is how we track their movements. But the important point to take away from this is that the pictures, even in that initial browsing stage, are pretty important. Now, when we went back to look at what people saw when they clicked through into a hotel's website, we wanted to see now what information was important. So now this is information that they could look at their website, they could go out to TripAdvisor, they could do anything they wanted. And we show you the same order of types of information. So on the left, you see firm-generated information. On the right, you see information from the from users, things like reviews. Whoops. So take a look at pictures, images. See how many fixations we saw? And then as you go along the bottom axis there, look at reviews. The number of reviews, the review text. There's a lot of research out there on how people respond to reviews, and that's good research. It's interesting. But people aren't reading the reviews the way that the industry thinks they are. They'll look at a couple, but they're looking at the pictures. Does this sound like you? Right? You're looking at the pictures, and you're looking at the pictures probably for a bunch of reasons. One is to see, does this hotel look like I belong there? Is this the right fit for me? Does this hotel look like it's in good condition? Which I find really interesting because think about it, Jenny, you're a visual specialist, and you're not going to put a picture on your own website that makes your hotel look bad. And yet people look at the pictures thinking, I want to make sure this hotel looks good. Of course it's going to look good, right? The pictures are supposed to be good. But people will they'll even look at pictures of things that have nothing to do with their stay. The people that we studied were going on a leisure trip. We specifically asked them to imagine they were going on a leisure trip, and they picked their destination. And we were curious about whether leisure guests would only look at leisure-related things, rooms and the restaurant and maybe the pool. They looked at everything. They looked at these spaces. I'm a leisure guest. I'm going to look at the ballroom. Why? But they do. So going back to then our visualization, this is during that click through and start considering a hotel. And again, they could have bounced out and looked at review sites, and some people did. The green that you see there is review text. So now that people have sort of made a preliminary choice, now they're drilling down to see what they really care about. And you'll notice, though, some people, there's no green. Gentlemen, no green. I love some of these. Like, they looked at 2 pictures. Yep, I'm good. I'm booking it. Okay. So again, you can see from different people have different approaches, but look at all that yellow. And some people look at just constant, all through every single picture available on the website. This was an important insight for us because it shows that the design, even if it's not that they're looking to see is it stylish or is it hip or whatever those words might mean, but they're looking to see what this hotel says to them that they're interpreting for themselves. They're not relying on someone else's interpretation through a review. They're looking to see how important this design is to the experience they're going to have. So this is sort of the research that we did, and we've pulled out all other kinds of things. If you're curious later on, I can point you towards the research itself. But this was a fun project, and now we're continuing to do stuff in this vein. We've been doing a project with looking at whether the pictures taken by guests versus pictures taken by the hotel company, if we see a difference in people's desire to book or if they believe the pictures are more accurate. And that paper we've just sent out, and we hope it gets accepted. We know it probably will get burped back to us because that's how academia works. But we're excited about doing this kind of work. Does this sort of resonate with your own experiences? Okay. How many of you take pictures of hotels and post them? Few people? Not many? How many of you look at the pictures, and how many of you read reviews? Ooh, a lot of review readers. Do you ever, when you go to do you go to TripAdvisor to read reviews? Yeah. That's kind of the big one, right? Yeah. Do you ever look at the user photographs on, you do? Yeah. How helpful is that? Talk loud so they can hear you. Yeah, and you make a good point about what a lot of people think about the pictures is how old are they? You know, and have they been doctored? The pictures that you see sometimes on hotel websites that, you know, will have the tray with the fruit and the bottle of wine and the 2 very attractive people enjoying themselves, you know. People look at those and go, no, show me the bathroom. Most hotels do not show a picture of the guest room bath. Guests really want to see that. And I know I was thrilled when I arrived at this hotel and I got into my room and I saw a nice big vanity in the bathroom. Because I have stuff, right? We were talking about stuff before class. And some people, you know, they travel with, I don't know what, a baggie with a Q-tip in it. But the rest of us, we have stuff. And so you need that vanity space. I want to know that a hotel has that. So I have a little bit of advantage, though, because I can usually tell by looking at a hotel on the outside roughly when it was built. And so I can look at it and I can guess immediately. If I look to see a hotel was built in the 80s, I'm like, vanities. And if I look to a hotel that was built around 2005, I'm like, ooh, pedestal sink. You know. So pictures matter, and clearly they matter to you.
So talking about the sort of change over time in hotels, because I know you look at trends as well as this sort of consumer behavior. Obviously, there's a lot of change over time, and in recent years, very specific changes that we were talking about that you've noticed in hotels specifically, and what you find in rooms and what you don't find in rooms and the sizes, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, are you all staying in this hotel? Have you noticed that this room feels a little bigger than rooms you might have stayed in other hotels recently? So we've seen a move towards hotel guest rooms getting smaller, and there's lots of reasons for that. The cost of real estate, right? If a piece of real estate's expensive, the developer of the project needs to find ways to make that project as successful as possible financially, and so they try to get as many rooms in as possible. So we're seeing guest rooms get a little smaller. Part of that is also because of technology. Flat screen TVs have changed the way we design hotels now because we don't need to have as much depth for something for the TV to sit on. We can we don't want to put the TV right on the wall. You're going to hear the next door TV pretty easily. But we've seen rooms get smaller. And we've seen a few things start to disappear from rooms. I was sort of joking a little bit about the vanities, but we're seeing desks disappear, right? And part of that, again, is technology. The idea is that many guests prefer to not work in their rooms. They want to work in the public spaces. They want to go down to the lobby and get a coffee or get a glass of wine and work where there are other people. There's something kind of sad. I don't know, I was in my room working a little bit yesterday afternoon, answering emails and whatnot, and I thought, oh, you know, maybe I should go down to the Starbucks. And that's kind of what we're seeing across many demographics, not just the, you know, proverbial millennials. So hotels are saying, look, the desks aren't getting used by a lot of guests. Why don't we take them out? And then we can shrink the room. We're seeing the same thing with mini bars. Mini bars, right? The hotels don't like to have them because they require maintenance. They take energy. They give off heat in the room because that little compressor is running and puts extra heat in the room, which means they have to use more energy to cool the room, to say nothing of keeping the refrigerator running. And then they have to go and check it and make sure that what is supposed to be in there is not in there, and all those kinds. And then when you actually do go down to the front desk and they say, oh, you know, there's a minibar charge, and you dispute it, what do? They always just say, oh, well, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So the hotels were finding that it wasn't making them any money, and it was a difficult thing to manage. So they've gotten rid of those in a lot of cases. And it's a challenge now. What do you do instead? Because guests still want something, and we don't all necessarily want to troop downstairs and go to the store. So hotels are experimenting with a bunch of different things. And then the last thing we're seeing disappear are closets, right? I don't know if you've stayed in some boutique hotels and you don't see closets. Either there's a closet but has no door on it, and that's twofold, or the reason for that is twofold. One is that the hotel spends a lot of time and money returning things to guests who forget things. So if you have a closet, you know, and guests, you know, you realize, oh my gosh, my flight's in, 20 minutes, I gotta leave, you tend to leave things behind. The other reason that you don't see closet doors as much is they're a maintenance nightmare. If they're the kind that are on tracks, like in this hotel, they pop off their tracks. If they're the kind that swing, they swing into things and bang up walls and bang up other doorways. So a lot of hotel brands are saying, let's just have something where you can hang a coat and hang an outfit, but we don't need doors. So those are some of the things we're seeing disappear. That might be, again, part of what you're noticing when you travel.
And there's also this trend that you spoke about in the article in the magazine about really sort of mini hotels,
yes.
pod hotels, I think
yes.
you call them. And I don't know, I was seeing some fascinating pictures the other day of places that almost looked like it was just a bed.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, that's partly a space issue, is it? Or are people happy to be in these small spaces?
They are. And I must admit, I'm a convert to this idea of these pod hotels. It's a space issue for real estate. It's also a construction issue. So there are a number of different hotel brands now that are experimenting with these smaller guest rooms. And in the case of one particular brand, these guest rooms are all made in a factory in Poland. And they're shipped to the site. And what's interesting is each guest room is exactly the same size and shape as a shipping container. On purpose, right? Because the infrastructure's there. So you can make these in a factory in Poland, get them on a ship, send them wherever, and they literally get craned into position. And what's interesting about these rooms is, yes, they're small and they're made in a factory, but they're cleverly designed. They are comfortable, they are intuitive to use, they are quirky and fun, they're playful. The one brand that I think of often uses iPads as the control in the room, and you can, preset the lighting treatment, and instead of saying the lighting, turn on this, turn on that, it has little presets like party time, and you hit it and it's the lights turn a different color. My favorite one is a preset for movie time, and you hit that, the blinds go down, the lights lower, and the TV turns on to the movie channel. I love it. But it's interesting that developers are looking at these smaller rooms because they make financial sense. Guests like these smaller rooms because, again, they're not spending that much time in the room. And if the room is well designed, it's clever, it's easy to use, it feels clean and comfortable and intuitive, I don't think space is as important now to a lot of guests. There's always going to be some people who want space because in our culture, space is status, right? The big room means I have arrived. These hotels, there are no suites. Every room is exactly the same. It's much easier to manage because you don't have to worry about, do I need a double room or a single room? They're all the same. You get your room, and if you're traveling with a family, and that is one of the problems, is because they're all the same. If you're traveling with a family, you each get your pod. But I think we're going to see more of these because they're very profitable, as well as really compelling for a lot of travelers.
And I suppose, so they invest more in the communal spaces in those kinds of hotels.
Exactly.
Because that's where people are hanging out and spending their time. Yeah.
So I think you're seeing room shrink, features shrink, and then we'll say sort of lobby bolstering. And I've got a couple of illustrations if you'd like to see those.
Yes, sure.
Rooms are shrinking, but we still have to make them interesting because people are choosing hotels based on what they see online. So, we're doing things with rooms to make them engaging, right? Now, maybe I'm not normal. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm not. I see this and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to sleep in the tent. I don't know how big that tent is, but you'll notice a couple of things about this room, even though it looks really cool. And it's smaller. Notice the furniture is built in. In the room you're staying in here in this hotel, the furniture can all be moved around, not in this room. And that's faster to build, easier to maintain for the hotel. Notice also the lighting. There's no lamps, really. It's all lighting that's attached to the walls. Again, that's an efficiency issue. But you're seeing this sort of move towards how can we make spaces more compelling visually, create a sense of uniqueness so that this doesn't look like just any other hotel room. The minute I showed this picture, it was great. There was this little ooh that came from the room. And yet if you took out the sexy lighting and you took out the tent, you'd be like, oh, it's just a room. So there's a lot of emphasis placed on these kinds of visual tools like lighting, like one focal point to get you to notice the room and make a connection, make an emotional connection. Yeah. Sure, that's carpet tile. And that's a really smart move because unless you have guests who never spill anything, you're going to be moving or changing out the carpet. Usually most hotels will change out the carpet every 4 to 6 years. But when a carpet gets stained, they've got to take it all out. This is carpet tile, but it's in a nice, quirky, kind of fun approach. It actually makes the space look bigger. If you put the carpets on a 45-degree angle, or excuse me, the grid on a 45 angle, it looks bigger. So they're doing several things here, making the room look bigger, making it look more interesting and graphically sort of compelling, and they're making it easier to maintain.
Doesn't look like there's any place to put your clothes, though.
I guess they assume you're not going to really bring many clothes with you. I don't know. It's true we're not seeing the entire room here. So, I mean, I know there's a bathroom. I know that there's a place to put your stuff. But it is true. And, we were talking before the session began. One thing that we're not seeing in hotels is places to put your luggage, which is, I find very frustrating. How many of you are unpackers? When you get to a hotel room, you unpack. Okay. And how many of you leave your things in your bag?
It's about 50-50, I think.
Yeah. Are you, Jenny, are you an unpacker or are you a...
I think one day I'm a not unpacker. More than one day I'm an unpacker, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what
is
I
it
do.
time
But
dependent?
one night, I think, I don't know if I can...
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also it's the nature of the trip. For something where you have clothes you need to hang, I just unpack anyway because you're halfway out. But it's true that now the target customer for this hotel probably is not the business traveler. Maybe it is, I don't know. The little tent is kind of interesting, but yeah.
Is this correlating with the tiny homes?
It's an interesting question. How does it connect with the tiny home? I don't know. I don't have any, it seems, I would be willing to hazard a guess that it may not be connected directly, but it's all tying back to sustainability a little bit. Maybe, and that's an interesting question. I don't know if anybody's looked at whether there's some kind of dialogue happening between the tiny home movement and the tiny guest room movement, but they do share DNA, which is smaller is easier to manage and less environmentally impactful. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's some design DNA being shared. I got hands everywhere now. Okay. Yeah. Well, you are 2 steps ahead of the game. Actually, some of the brands are already looking at that. Holiday Inn Express has a new prototype they've introduced in the last 3 months, has exactly that. You walk in, there is a narrow shelf with charging for your phone. If you have a key, although keys are going away too, right? We're starting to see more and more hotels want you to use a device, which for me drives me crazy because I'm not a device person. I have a phone, but I never connect to the internet with it. My students think I'm crazy. Maybe you do too. But in addition to the shelf with the charging, they just have a series of pegs. And there is a place where you can, sort of a low counter where you can put a bag with a drawer underneath it. But the pegs are there for your jacket, your whatever it may be, and they don't have a closet. So you're exactly right. I think you're just ahead of the curve. Like a hanging bar? Yeah. And some do. Some do have those bars. It's interesting. We see things, a lot of the innovation in the hotel design world actually comes from the lower cost brands, from the lower chain scales. If you're in the hotel industry, you're familiar with the term chain scale. We have economy hotels at one end and we have luxury hotels at the other. And a lot of the innovation is coming from the economy and lower end of the chain because they're looking for ways to economize. And then we're finding that guests find it compelling. And so yes, at the lower end, we're actually seeing exactly what you described. And as we go up the chain, more and more brands are going, maybe we should explore this. So it's interesting, you mentioned the Disney Contemporary Hotel and your comment is that they had minimal space for your stuff. The Disney Contemporary Resort Hotel was one of the first modular built hotels in this country. It was actually built, the rooms were built in a factory. So it was actually built in the 60s and it was sort of an exploration into this approach. And so you can see that was like the great granddaddy of the rooms we're seeing now. So it's interesting that you notice the things that we're doing in 2017, 2018, they were exploring with this in the 60s. Maybe people don't realize how much stuff people travel with. We do carry a lot.
The other thing I think is sometimes when I'm in these rooms that don't have space to store anything or put clothes, that they're not thinking that people are going to stay more than 1 or 2 or 3 nights.
That's true. That's true. Length of stay does, when the brands are deciding how to design a typical room for their branded hotels, they think a lot about who their target customer is, how long they're staying, why they're coming, and a lot of hotels are designed for the business traveler who stays 1 or 2 nights. You're exactly right. We don't have a lot of brands that focus specifically on family travel. We don't have a lot of brands. Once you start getting into the resort design, then you're like, okay, we need storage because people are staying for 5 days, 2 weeks, whatever it might be. But a lot of urban hotels, they're balancing these challenges. One is the cost of the real estate. One is the cost of maintenance and upkeep of these rooms and the staff to clean them. One thing I didn't mention in my sort of weird career is one of the years that I was an undergrad at Cornell, in the summer, I worked as a room attendant. I cleaned rooms for a hotel company. Best experience ever. If you have young Cornellians in your life, and if you have young Cornellians in the hotel school in your life, encourage them to get a summer working in a line job. I cannot tell you how important that is, not just because it teaches you what it's like to work in a line job And by line, I mean working with the guest directly or doing something that doesn't seem very glamorous. But because I cleaned rooms for a summer, I understand how people use them and what they do and don't do in the room and what takes a long time to clean and what doesn't take a long time to clean. It's ruined me for life. I walk into a space, I mean, even walking into here, I'm like scanning, you know, looking to see things that make it harder for the hotel to be successful, either with guests or financially. But back to this issue of you know, guest room design, at the luxury and the resort end, they can afford to have things that take longer to clean, take more effort to maintain. At the lower end, you can't. And that's why the lower end is innovating, I think, a lot faster than some of the higher end hotels.
And I think one of the things that you and I were talking about earlier was whether hotels rooms just have a shower, because there's a move towards some of them just having a shower and some are having a bath, some that have to have both. And that, you were saying, depends very much on who they think their target consumer is.
Exactly. I mean, if your target guest is international, particularly Asian travelers, bathtub is very important. If your target guest is families, bathtub's very important. But if your target guest is none of those, we're seeing the bathtubs go away too. Showers take less space. Showers don't use as much water typically, unless it's me. I love a long shower. But the movement is towards finding ways to give guests the kind of experience they need and want in a way that is financially sustainable, but still creates that connection with the guests, so they'll want to be part of the brand.
And I know you talked a little bit about, I think, maybe one of your pet peeves, which is towel hooks. Towel hooks.
Oh, God. Oh.
Or not, or lack of towel hooks.
And I gather everybody, I hear this, you know, I love this. So you stay in a hotel, and there's always a little sign somewhere that says, save the earth, save your towel, hang your towel up. And I'm like, great, where? Yeah, right. They give you one of two things. They give you a hook like this, one little hook. So you hang a sodden towel on the hook, and the next morning it's a little damp still because it can't get air, right? Or they give you a king room, or worse, a double room, and they give you one hook, right? I'm sorry, a hook costs $1, right? Home Depot, HomeDepot.com. Put up a hookup. And this is, like, my students laugh at me because I get on these rants, and I'll say, how many of you, where did you put your towel this morning? And I realize, oh, they're undergraduates. You know, their towels on the floor. Right, yeah. But is this not the case? Or the other trend, speaking of towels, you got me started, Jenny.
I know.
We're in trouble. We're going to be here all day now. The bar that they put in front of and below the sink for the hand towel. Right? So you're washing your face, you know, you're doing whatever at the sink, and you're like, okay, I want a towel. Your instinct is not to step back and burrow around underneath trying to find a towel. Your instinct is exactly. And how many of you are right-handed? How many of you are left-handed? How many of you don't know? A couple of people. Both hands went up. That's great. Most people are right-handed, so your instinct is to do that. And so that's where there should be a hook for your hand towel, or one of those old-fashioned rings. Those work great. And then for those of you who are right-handed, you know, that's often we put the electrical outlet in the bathroom. It varies. I'm bumping this. Sorry about that, sound person. The electrical outlet is going to be on the opposite side depending on whether the room is a mirror image of the one next to it, right? We just have the same room and we just mirror it. But people are strongly handed, which means that that outlet should be swapping each time, because most people want to either plug something in and then you use it on the right so you don't have the cord. Those of you who use a hairdryer, right? The cord ends up going across and you think, I'm across the sink, there's water, and yet I'm using this device. Why isn't it on the right? So this is why as I say, I'm ruined for life, because I just go in places. Everyone says, is there any place that does it right? And some places do. And when I do see one that's right, I immediately take a picture and show my students. But it's more fun to show pictures of things that aren't right. So if you're in your travels, you see something wacky and you think would be really interesting as an example for me to use in class, please send it to me, skr4@cornell.edu. SKR4. I would love it for my collection. Yeah. Yes.
Hi. My pet peeve is the bed. I'm kind of a hard sleep, I difficult sleeper, and I'll zero in on the image of the bed and the pillow as a glow. So for me, I would zero right in on the bed there. And the pillows look inviting, like it has an old quilt or really heavy stuff. So it's kind of, I'm just curious about the image of the bed.
Oh my gosh, the fact that you focus on the bed, one of the things we were able to do in this eye tracking is not only could we see what they looked at, but what in what order. And I will tell you, you are normal. You are 100, you'd be very happy to know you're 100% normal, because that is the first thing any eye goes to in a picture of the guest room. Now, you might say, well, that's because the bed's in the middle of the picture usually, so isn't it just there's a bias towards looking in the middle of the picture? We don't see that in looking at other pictures on the websites. When people are looking at the pool or looking at the, your eye will go to certain things, but with the guest room, absolutely. And when we interviewed people about what they thought about the bed, they say very similar things to what you just said. When the minute they see something that doesn't look like it could be washed every time, it's a complete turnoff. Those bed scarves that were popular for a while, right? People are, don't want to see those. And if you are at a hotel that still has the old bedspreads, that's it. Listen, everyone. Oh no.
And also, you talked about the mattress wars, I believe.
Oh yes.
The comfortable mattress and how it kind of set off one company kind of set off a bit of a mattress war, which I thought was kind of fascinating.
Well, it did. A good sleep is really, really important, and guests will remember if their sleep wasn't good. And so it started in the 90s with a brand that is not this hotel's brand. Can I say a non-brand that's not this hotel's brand? Westin Hotels started, which is now owned by Marriott, so it's okay. But they started with what they called the heavenly bed. Maybe you've heard of this. And they put a lot of money into an improved mattress and improved bedding and all kinds of good things. And they set off an enormous sort of arms race in terms of having a great bed. And so now you see a great bed at almost every chain scale. The Westin started it, and Westin's sort of in the 4-star upper upscale. I love the chain scales. There's upper upscale and there's upscale. There's no lower upscale, just upper upscale. But the upper upscale chain scale started it, and then the luxury brands did it. And now there's trickle down. And now when you get down to almost the mid-scale level, they have great beds. And this is, again, where we're seeing someone innovates. You can't copyright a design of a guest room. So if you have a great idea, it's not going to be very hard for other brands to jump on it. Oh, there's a microphone.
Hi. I'm wondering, with the number of baby boomers of all of us and the rise in adjustable beds and people with bad backs who want to travel but have adjustable beds at home, my husband and I have never seen a hotel that has that ability to have the back supported. Do you see any trends in maybe this coming in the near future?
That's a great question, and the answer is no, I haven't seen it. I have seen a couple of luxury brands exploring those, the beds where you can adjust the number, right, for firmness, but I haven't seen any ones that look at angle. They use pillows to do that. We actually had a student at the hotel school, graduated a couple of years ago, really interesting guy. He came up with a business idea of for the hotel to have an amenity that the guests could order in advance, which was a back-friendly room. Because he had been injured in an accident as a kid, and he had back trouble. And he said, I travel with all these specialty pillows, and I have all, but wouldn't it be great if, just like you can select a room that's far from the elevator or a room that's close to the ice machine, does anybody ever do that, close to the ice machine? A couple people. I won't ask why. But he said it'd be great, and then the hotel could have in the room a supportive pillow, like sometimes that you might see, or one for behind your knees. And it's an interesting idea, but back to your question, I have not seen any hotels looking at a bed that has that kind of mechanism, partially because it's a maintenance challenge. and probably a significant weight issue and cost issue. But you touched on something really important, which is as people get older, it doesn't mean they travel less. We travel more. I'm on the tail end of the baby boom. So, I'm starting to think about, what I'm going to do for fun when I finish doing what I'm doing for fun now. And traveling a lot is something that is important to me, and I'm sure it's important to many of you. I don't think there's a single hotel brand out there who's really figured it out of how to let people still have the great experience without feeling that they're in an accommodation for some kind of disability. And we're not, just because we're getting older doesn't make us disabled, just means we're sore. So it's an interesting challenge. Business ideas out there for you. Okay. There's a way back there, yes. Pet friendliness and the challenge, absolutely. I think pet friendliness is just one symptom of something we're seeing across the entire hospitality industry, which is guests want more control. They want more control over their experience. They don't want to be told what they can and cannot do. And so if I want to travel with my pet, I'm going to travel with my pet. And for some hotel brands, this has been a huge success for them. They have made a point of saying, not only are we pet friendly, we have an in-house pet that greets your pet. And they have a, oh yeah, oh yeah. Maybe not, but are any of you familiar with Kimpton? Right? Kimpton, when you arrive at a Kimpton hotel, there is I don't know if it's the same in every single Kimpton property, but they have a little chalkboard with the names of the pets who are checking in that day. Right? And they have dog biscuits and bowls and things that they have in the room when you arrive. So they've used that as a differentiating factor. It gets back to who's your target customer. And if I am doing large conventions in a hotel like this, pet friendly doesn't really make sense for them. And for them to accommodate pets, there's the maintenance issue, the cleaning issue. So you'd have to take a floor or two and say, these are pet floors because of allergies and people who have concerns about, maybe some people just are really frightened of some animals. I don't think people travel with their snakes, but I would imagine that some people would have a problem with that. But I think we're seeing a reaction to, I want to have a kind of travel experience that I want, and I'm going to find a hotel that gives me that. And not all hotels are going to do it, but the ones that do it really well. Okay. Oh, so many hands. Over here, yes.
Okay, we have microphones, so just unless there's no mic, if you can repeat the question.
Sure. But down here in front.
Motel 6 has eliminated carpets and gone to Formica floors. And I'm wondering if that has to do with that's okay, I know. That's okay. With the question of pets. They also, by the way, have eliminated all the comfy chairs in the room. The only chair you can sit at is that stupid thing at the knee space. And if you want to watch television, you got to be on the bed. So is there any bottom to how far down they can go with what they give you?
I like your choice of words. So you have several good points there. The issue of moving away from carpets, we're seeing a lot of hotels go away from carpets. Pets are just the sort of one little element of it. It's a maintenance issue. It's easier to keep them clean. It's making the rooms less allergenic. And it also, it's just, it lasts longer. You don't have to replace that as often. I'll be honest, a lot of these things that you're seeing are reactions to increasing costs of real estate, increasing costs of labor. Hotel owners and developers are trying to find ways to make their projects have the best possible return on investment. And they're looking at things that may or may not be a good fit for every guest. I too bemoan the loss of comfortable chairs in guest rooms. Because I don't sit in them, I throw my stuff on them because there's nowhere else to put your stuff. But you're exactly right. And this is something especially at the economy end of the scale, because the math on those projects, they've got to squeeze every possible dollar out of that property in order for it to be financially viable, because they can't push rate, they can't charge as much. They don't have suites, they don't have catering, they don't have a spa, they have no other sources of revenue. Nobody pays for the phone service anymore. So they have to find some way. And so unfortunately, it's in the loss of some of these creature comforts. And they're trying to make up for it by creating more accommodating lobbies. I have an image I want to show you, actually, speaking of that. So, oops. So this is a mid-scale brand. This is Red Lion, which is, yeah, this is a Red Lion. And they are exploring creating lobbies that are where they want guests to come and actually spend time. But they can't afford to have a nice big lobby because it's an inexpensive hotel. So they're looking at things like this. Now, when I see that, all I think of is, why is she not sitting on the cushion? That doesn't look very comfy. But think of how many seats you can fit in that small a space. This is more typical of what we're seeing in lobbies, which is, again, this idea of a multi-use space. But you bemoan the loss of a comfy chair in the guest room. That's because they want you to have your comfy chair down here where you'll buy a cappuccino or a bag of chips. Because they don't have a mini bar in the room for you to buy it from. Am I being too depressing? The tone in the room was going like, oh, yeah, this is bad. Hi.
One of the things you talked about earlier was sustainability and the little cards that they have in the room saying, if you hang up your towel, we won't replace it and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it seems like it would be a cost saver for the hotel. And yet every time I try and do that, I end up with fresh towels every day.
Yeah.
What is the deal with that?
I can tell you exactly what the deal is with that. Yeah, well, it's a training issue. You're exactly right. Having cleaned a lot of rooms, you get in a rhythm. There is a pattern to your behavior, which you've been trained to have because it's efficient, right? And so when you have something that breaks that pattern, it slows you down. So for many room attendants, it is easier to just grab all the towels, regardless if they've been, unless they are clearly untouched in their original locations. If it's been touched, you grab it, because that's just the process. And I know it's irritating to guests, because then you say, you asked me to do this, I did it, and you didn't honor that. Now you've annoyed me, right? We're in the business of not annoying people. But it's a challenge, because it's a training issue, it's a way to, and part of it is also hotels are trying to say we need 14 rooms cleaned in a shift or 16 rooms cleaned in a shift. And so that room attendant is just doing his or her best to get that done. And anything that slows them down makes it hard for them to accomplish their job, and they're going to get in trouble if they haven't done their 14 to 16. So it's a mindset on the part of we as the hotel owners, operators. We should be making it so that the room attendants can do their job and be able to respond to what guests need and create a reaction in the guest that says, oh, this hotel cares about me and what I want to do. Again, another hotel brand I think is brilliant about it. The room attendant has to do fewer rooms, but they leave a little note. I stayed in one of these hotels, and I had brought some fruit with me, and I had a banana. And I ate my banana, and I put my banana in the garbage, or the peel in the garbage. The next day, there was a note from a room attendant with a banana. She says, I see you like bananas. Have a great day.
That's personal attention, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, this is what we do. This is what we do. So I'm glad you asked the question, and it's not the fault of the room attendant, really. It's down to the pressures that he or she is under. Hands everywhere. Oh, no. Oh, we're going to follow. How are we doing on time, by the way?
Yeah.
We're good? Okay. Okay, good.
Hi, I have a quick one about colors.
Yes.
And I wonder if you can go back to the one with the tent and tell me if those are accurate colors.
Oh, they're definitely not.
Good, okay. Because I would walk into that room and walk right out.
Why?
It's depressing.
Tell me more. This is interesting. Tell me more.
Hotels usually try to put a little blue, a little green, that is mauve.
And we don't even know if it's mauve, right? Because the light levels in here, yeah. This photograph is representative because there's something else about what happens with your eye when you're looking at pictures. So let's get all scientific again. you look for contrast. Your eye will immediately go to where there's contrast. If I show you 8 pictures and one of them has a very high degree of contrast in the image, you're going to go right to it. You may not decide you like it, but you can't help but look at it, because that's how we're wired. So this picture is designed to make you look. It probably doesn't represent at all what the room really looks like. Now, it may be that we don't have a lot of color. A lot of hotels are moving away from having a lot of color. They might have 1 or 2 elements, like a throw cushion or a piece of art. And part of that, again, is financial, because both colors fade, right? The materials fade when they get exposed to light, and the color loses its vibrancy, and then you look at it and say, this isn't well maintained. But you also have color trends. And it is difficult. Now, we have a wonderful opportunity at the Statler Hotel, because there is a color that's our color, right? And I see some of you wearing it today, and that color's never going to change, right? We're going to wear it. So we do have those pops of color in the Statler. We've not only on the throw, but there's also a little ottoman in the rooms that's bright red. But most hotel brands won't commit to a color like that for a lot of different reasons. But it's true that it's very unlikely you will ever see the room actually look like this. It's been photographed specifically to attract your eye. Okay. There's so many hands. I'm going to sort of bounce around here. Maybe right up here up front, and then sort of I'm going to try to zing back and forth as much as I can.
Yeah, a little different kind of question. Airlines are all now starting to charge for every little separate different thing. You talked about the difficulty getting revenue. Do you see that trend coming out in hotels? I know we have the resort fee now. We have the fee for the beach activities. Do you see that trend happening in the upper level hotels or the mid-level? Because there's where you get that challenge back and forth between honoring those who are coming as long-term guests or loyal guests versus the costs.
That's a great question, and it sort of gets away from design a little bit, but I can talk to it because the industry has been grappling with this a lot. And sort of perversely, it's the higher end hotels that charge you for everything, and the lower end hotels include it. Right. And a lot of people like, that seems non-intuitive, right? But part of it is because the higher end people will pay it. So if you just stop paying it, eventually, they're going to find it, and they'll just roll it into the rate. But this is back to the issue with minibars. So another hotel brand I'm aware of has said, you know what, we're not going to bother nickel and diming you over the Twix that you had in your room. We're just going to give them to you. There's going to be a basket in your room, or maybe not in every room, it's down the hall in sort of a little pantry, and it's got coffee and tea and cookies and sweets, and help yourself. Because what does it cost? Very little to provide that. And you know, the cost of that Twix to you, you think, well, you know, this is a great value. I'm getting a free Twix. You know, this is terrific. So I think back to your original question is, I don't think we're getting away from those nickel and diming at the high end anytime soon, but resist, okay, resist. But at the lower end, they can't, because the guest just has been trained that it's inclusive. What they'll do is just take things away rather than nickel and dime them. Now, wireless, internet, I predict, and I've been predicting this for a while, Sophia is one of my former students, and she'll know I've been predicting this now for probably, I don't know, 10 years, that internet is like a utility now. It's like power. And pretty soon, hotels will not be able to charge. It's like they can't charge you for water in your room, although maybe they should in some places. But the bottles they do, but the water coming out of your tap. But I think the internet is, especially as people are much more connected, it's just seen as a utility, and the paying $12.95 or $16.95 to use the internet, that's going away. Not soon enough, but it's going away, I think. Okay. Can we go way at the back, and then we're going to just sort of bounce from one side to the next.
I came in a bit late, so I apologize if this question has been asked. I travel a lot internationally, and my bone to pick with hotels is they don't think about women travelers.
Thank you.
For example, this morning, I got ready to step in the shower, no shower cap. So I had to improvise with a towel because I wasn't going to get dressed and wait for somebody to bring me a shower cap. I travel to Tajikistan a lot, and they now know me. It's a Hyatt hotel, and they, you know, accommodate me. They have everything ready for me, but this is so annoying.
You're spot on, and I don't have a pithy, oh, here's how to fix it problem other than please give us shower caps. This is continuing to be an issue, though, and I think, have you noticed how many hotel companies are introducing new brands all the time? Those of you in our industry, the hospitality industry, might see that, you know, it's not just that there's one kind of Marriott, there's like 30 kinds of Marriott. And part of it is they're trying to slice the market into thinner and thinner slices. And nobody has sort of said, I'm going to go after the woman business traveler in detail. A couple of brands are trying, as saying, that's going to be my target, and I'm going to have those features. But it's, again, this is where we run into the challenge of the developer, the hotel owner. I think what the issue is, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. Am I going to get in trouble? We need more women owning hotels. We need more women developing hotels. When we get more women running hotels, owning hotels, creating brands, we're going to see some of the things you're looking for. Gentlemen, we love you. We couldn't survive without you. But I think there's different perspectives that haven't been brought out in what we're doing in design. Okay. Now to this side this time. Sophia. Hello, Sophia.
So I stayed in a hotel recently. Usually pretty loud. Usually not an issue. So I stayed in a hotel recently that didn't have a coffee machine. I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to get your perspective on it because I've experienced a few different things. One, where the hotels are just getting rid of the coffee machine altogether. And then number two, they're moving towards this Nespresso, you know, Keurig machine, but then the tea goes away altogether. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
You hit my magic button. Sophia was one of my teaching assistants at one point, so it's so nice to see you. She knows I'm a serious tea drinker. We're all getting back to the same kinds of issues. We're seeing the coffee makers, first of all, they moved away from ones that had a carafe because of sanitation issues, and it slowed down the room attendant. So there were two things. They moved to the individual, you know, pour the water in and put your cup under. The movement towards the Keurig, some brands were charging for those little things, and what they found was guests resisted, so they've stopped. But part of the moving to single cup preparation is a sanitation and a speed issue. But the tea bag one, even this morning at breakfast, need more tea, right? Because tea is, we're both from the Commonwealth.
Yes,
so
tea is very important to me too,
very serious tea people.
Very important.
But this tea is, how many of you are regular tea drinkers? See, Marianne? I know you have cameras. Look. I'm going to get in so much trouble. But it's true. But tea is a trend. And we're not seeing, again, it's back to what are the partnerships the brands have with purveyors? What is the room attendant required to do? It's one more thing. But I just travel with tea bags for now. That's...
It's not the same.
Yes.
It's not the same.
Thank you.
I'm a Brit. I take my tea really seriously.
Yeah. But it's true. With Keurig tea, you can't control the strength. It's always high octane because they think you're going to add milk or, heaven forbid, creamer to it. And some of us are just plain black tea people. So, yeah. It can taste like coffee too, right? Or sometimes the mugs taste like coffee. You put the mug up to your nose, like, it smells like coffee. When I go home to Canada and I cry because the tea tastes like tea. It's great. Any Canadians here besides me? Oh, okay. Yes.
I would say I'm an Airbnb person, and I'm so wondering how is Airbnb putting sort of any kind of pressure on hotels, because you don't get nickel and dimed with Airbnbs. You know what you're getting, and so
It's a really interesting question. Airbnb is taking a piece out of some of the hotel market. What Airbnb is taking the piece out of is people who stay more than a couple of nights. or family travel, because it has the amenities that you need. When you're staying longer, you want a little kitchen, or you're traveling with kids and you need the space. I don't think, despite what they say, I don't think Airbnb is making much of a dent in the business market, which is the biggest segment for hotels. They're not making a dent in the group market, but they are making a dent, as I said, but in certain cities. I don't think Airbnb probably has the traction in secondary and tertiary cities that it does in primary cities. I was reading somewhere that Paris, I'm going to look at David because you might know this, Paris has the highest number of Airbnb rentals. Is that true?
I don't know if it was the number or the percentage of the rooms available. I think it was the percentage of the rooms.
And it's a shockingly high percentage. And that doesn't surprise me because in a place like Paris, it's very difficult to build a hotel. And so there's constraints about adding more supply. And so Airbnb has picked up the slack. But I think you're going to see Airbnb used for certain kinds of travel and hotels used for other kinds of travel. Got one over here?
A little bit off topic, but the Seaport Hotel in Boston, which is managed by a Cornellian, does some very innovative things. And one of the things I appreciated was that the staff, no matter who, what, where, when, or whatever, were extremely friendly. And one of the things that they did is they built the tip for the maid into your bill. And then they took the tip and spread it to all the workers. And I found that it was fabulous because everybody was friendly, as opposed to the selective. And you know, when you're staying, how much do I give? How much do I don't give? Do I remember? And this eliminated, for me, an issue, but it added a component that I thoroughly, as an extrovert, totally enjoyed in my experience at the Seaport Hotel. They've done some other wonderfully innovative things, and I'm wondering if the industry has reached a point where they're looking at other very innovative hotels and are trying to incorporate some of those kinks in the service end of it.
You have hit a whole new vein of topic we could chat about. We actually have a tipping specialist at the hotel school, Michael Lynn. One of the things is you can't necessarily pool tips in every state. So tipping, there's a lot of laws about what you can and cannot do, and so depending on where you are, and it's a very fraught topic in our industry. I think it also, it bothers me a little bit to think that friendly is because you're getting paid to be. And I know that it's, one of our challenges in our industry is getting staff, getting good staff. And again, we're in the business of creating relationships. We're in the business of creating an emotional connection with somebody. And so we need to hire people like you who are extroverts. And hospitality has to be something sort of innate to you in order to give that kind of experience. But back to the tipping issue, it's something that we're really struggling with across hotels, restaurants. It's a huge issue in restaurants. Because there isn't a model yet that works for everybody. Some restaurant companies are experimenting with no tipping, right? Everything's included. They call it hospitality included at Union Square Hospitality, which I think is a nice term. But what they're finding is their best servers are quitting because they can make more at a place where they get tipped. So we don't have a good answer. It's hard. And it's in the culture of the United States specifically, North America specifically, and it's going to take a long time for it to swing to something else. I don't have a magic answer to that one, other than when someone does something nice for you, look them in the eye and say thank you from the heart, and that does a lot. That does a lot.
So thank you to both of